Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, in this series on the network of global corporate control. The network of global corporate control is a big conglomerate that owns and controls many companies on the capital markets and issues the world's paper currencies. Three mathematicians at the Federal Institute of Technology, Vitaly Glatfelder and Battiston, proved the existence of the network of global corporate control, also known as the Banking Cartel, by looking at who owned the 43,000 companies traded on the world's capital markets. The mathematicians found that the same directors were appointed to the boards and that the network of global corporate control had done this so that they could exercise 10 times the control that they were actually entitled to. Today's segment is pre-recorded and is called Accountability in the Global Currency Reset, thanks to DCTV, Carmen Stanley, studio producer, Maurice Jackson, audio and prompter, and Crusade Starnes, floor director. This series is about what is real and what is fake. A couple of weeks ago, I said, on the 31st of October, the reality that we are currently living in is not the fake reality that the dupes of the banking cartel think is real. Many people are living in reality in the world where Trump is an agent of the banking cartel and a bit actor who is bankrupt. I was writing about actual reality yesterday when I posted the teleprompter for today's live segment of the DCTV series on the network of global corporate control. Last week, I told you that the banking cartel was censoring how the banking cartel bombed Hiroshima and how Auschwitz was actually a uranium enrichment facility. I told you to watch what happens to this truth. It's a touchstone for reality. No sooner did I say this than the banking cartel broke the link to the document informing you about how it was the Germans who developed the atom bomb and that the Russians were the ones who installed the gas chambers in Auschwitz after they freed the camps. The Jews were providing labor for the enrichment of uranium and were not gassed at all. We are fighting for the right to tell you what is real and what is fake on this series. I upload the archives for this series on YouTube. YouTube hides many of the comments behind View More Reply buttons. People who comment are often not what they seem. The most recent comments on last week's segment were made by special purpose accounts referred to as sock puppets. I've been telling you that North Korea is not about a new nuclear threat at all, and that what you're hearing from Donald Trump is fake. I've been telling you that the United States Constitution of 1789 is not in effect, and that Donald Trump is not the legitimate president of the United States. I've also been telling you that the global currency reset is going to sort out what's true from what's false. Before the sorting out in the global currency reset is finished, people are going to trade the banking cartel's lies for the reality that we've been discussing on this series, and people are going to trade the banking cartel's currencies for local currencies and for the world's monetary gold reserves. We will calculate the price of gold in relation to the national currencies using historic trade numbers. This series is now at a very dramatic moment where the banking cartel has to reveal itself in order to fight the truth and reality. Of course, this is a losing battle because the banking cartel has to remain invisible to prevent people from learning about it, or people would end the corruption. And of course, I have so many opportunities to show you what's real and what's fake. We're all going to end the corruption from the banking cartel by winding it down. it's going to take us some time to get comfortable with how we are all working together. This is to be expected. We will work things out in a way that makes sense to us. This is a promise. I'm accountable to you, and we're going to figure out the best way to make certain that our process makes this very clear. If you review our 2.5-year archives, you will see that we've been working on this very issue for a long time. The Banking Cartel reversed the order of the segments for the last 4 programs in this series. I'm waiting to see what the Banking Cartel is going to try next. Could you just stop the scrolling? What happened was we had a fire alarm, and we had to go outside, and we finally decided that we were going to come back and shoot the series. So that was what the Banking Cartel tried next, although maybe that was just an alarm that was going off in somebody's computer. You never really know for sure about these things. Anyway, now we're going to scroll again. The fact is that Donald Trump has been admitting that the United States government is not legitimate by his silence. Something is going to give, and I can tell you that the Overseer Mandate Trustee of the Global Debt Facility containing the world's wealth is not going to shrink from this confrontation between what is real and what is fake. Your job now is to draw correct conclusions from this confrontation and to share what you have learned with your loved ones. Let's talk about that imposter Donald Trump and what he did at the beginning of November. He said that he was nominating Jerome Powell to replace Janet Yellen as chair of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors when her term as chairman ends in February. What is wrong with this picture? Jerome Powell is more of the same. Powell's resume is as establishment as they come. Born in Washington, D.C., he graduated from Princeton, got his law degree at Georgetown, and then went to work in New York City, winding up at Dillon Read & Company as an investment banker that eventually, that was a bank that became part of UBS. So this is very consistent with the picture I've been describing to you. Donald Trump is indeed an agent of the Banking Cartel. Donald Trump lied to you that he was draining the swamp. Donald Trump is nothing but a big liar for the Banking Cartel. What else is wrong with this picture? Since the Banking Cartel owes $2 quadrillion in Treaty of Versailles bonds held in the Global Debt Facility, when are we going to wind them down? I'm going to keep on asking you this question. If the United States is to continue as a nation, as the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF have agreed, the United States has to get out of those unconstitutional Federal Reserve notes and replace them with the United States monetary gold reserves and with local currencies. The Federal Reserve notes are not real currency. They are corrupt pieces of paper that funnel our income taxes, all of them, to the Banking Cartel. In last week's segment, I showed you that the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF have agreed to the global currency reset and to wind down the Fed. The rest of this segment is going to be devoted to the disconnect between the lies of the Banking Cartel and the reality of the Global Debt Facility containing the world's wealth. The Banking Cartel is also trying to use media outlets like Sputnik News to peddle their lies. I pointed this out in an article in Sputnik News about how the Central Bank of Russia has recently been buying bullion at an unprecedented pace. According to Argentine financial expert Gabriel Rubinstein, this policy is aimed at protecting the Russian economy in the event of crisis situations, including against dollar-related manipulations by the U.S. I commented. My previous comment was deleted. Rickards is a CIA agent. People are confusing the dollar and the Federal Reserve note. They are not the same thing. People are also ignoring the world's monetary gold reserves that were deposited with the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF. In short, it appears that Sputnik is trying to hide the truth about what is really happening. The banking cartel, now that we can see it exists, is inevitably doomed. Jose Rizal and Ferdinand Marcos have set up the global debt facility, and there is nothing preventing us from following through. That is what we are now doing. We're mobilizing the global debt facility with the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF. We are now simply carrying through what we have already agreed to do. That is what this tweet that I tweeted says. The elites are having a hard time understanding that they are no longer calling the shots. The agents of the banking cartel are lying now and saying that nothing is going on in the global currency reset, when it's clear that the beneficiaries of the global debt facility and me as representative of the U.S. and its monetary gold reserves in the global debt facility and spokesperson for the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF have agreed to replace the Federal Reserve notes and the rest of the banking cartel's fake fiat currencies for local currencies and the world's monetary gold reserves in the global currency reset. The banking cartel is trying now to hide our communication on this very matter. And so I put 2 links in the teleprompter. I simply reactivate the links and show how the World Bank Board of Governors that administers the global debt facility have agreed to wind the banking cartel down in the global debt facility. We will see immediate improvements in the cleanup of corruption from the banking cartel. I'm sitting in the center of the world's corrupt money system and acting as a switchboard operator, taking messages from the world's people to the elites. And what I said on the 10th of November to someone whose screen name is Brooklyn52, I said that they were wrong and that we will see immediate improvements. I'm repeating a blog that I posted last June on the internet about the way that the people in the various countries are going to reconfigure the legitimate governments. The banking cartel is being wound down in receivership in the global debt facility. The group of thugs and their corruption that I have documented with the assistance of many, many people over the years has no further role to play. It will take us some time to end their interference, and that is what we're going to do. The World Bank was created in order for us to be able to accomplish this monumental task. That's why Article 4, Section 10 exists in the World Bank's Articles of Agreement, and that says, Section 10, Political Activity Prohibited. The bank and its officers shall not interfere in the political affairs of any member, nor shall they be influenced in their decisions by the political character of the member or members concerned. Only economic considerations shall be relevant to their decisions, and these considerations shall be weighed impartially in order to achieve the purposes stated in Article 1. We have been preparing for this day. I'm going to attach the teleprompter for a DCTV segment on the 9th of May, 2017. The corruption has been documented meticulously, and so that's what we'll be discussing a little bit later in the program. Okay, now this is dated the 15th of June, and I sent it to a man named Jack. I have answered this point many, many times. What you have said is banking cartel garbage. That is not what's going on. Listen to what I've said about the Coalition for the Rule of Law in my latest video on DCTV, and then I've given you the link to that. The Coalition for the Rule of Law is now running the World Bank and IMF and in charge of the world's wealth. I am authorized to speak for the coalition. None of the embassies in Washington and Tokyo or the UN missions in New York have denied this reality. I vote the U.S. shares on the Board of Governors and the Development Committee and the Board of Executives of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund during this interregnum, that means interruption, in the legitimate government of the United States. That is what my tweet was about. Rickards, that CIA shill, tried to make the same wrong point you did. I answered this already. See page 11 of the teleprompter for next week's segment on the series of the Network of Global Corporate Control, which I pre-recorded 2 days ago and tweeted. Get in a group and work at the local level. The Secretariat of the World Bank is not in charge. The U.S. Treasury is not in charge. The world's people are via the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF. Grassroots organizations are in charge of clearing out all the corruption in the local communities, at which point it will be possible for the people in each country to finish cleaning up the corruption in their nations. The World Bank and IMF have no role to play in deciding how countries are going to be governed. That is in the Articles of Agreement of the World Bank and also in the IMF's articles. That's the IMF's Article 4, Section 3. There's been state capture of the World Bank and IMF, which is why these organizations have not been following their articles. This will change. I was locked out of the World Bank and IMF when I told the Board of Executive Directors to stop giving more power to the President of the World Bank than he was entitled to. I also repeated this point in paragraph 6 of the minutes of the spring meetings. It's up to the executive directors to interpret the articles. I'm the canary in the coal mine, and there's work from the grassroots, and I work from the grassroots like everybody else. And on the 15th of June, Jack wrote, CIA banksters also use the IMF, World Bank, Bank for International Settlements, and many other global organizations to carry their work into every country in the world. These organizations are used by the CIA bankers just like they use central bankers and manipulate broker bankers. In the end, the U.S. Treasury has supreme power over the U.S. economy and will win any economic war waged against America. The problem is that CIA bankers don't really work for America. They work for the CIA, the company, and are addicted to power, control, and manipulation. Karen, this seems like a fairly accurate picture of banks banking banksters. If true, then getting the World Bank to follow the law and play by the rules appears rather farcical. Any comment? Okay, well, we've just dealt with Jack. Jack is obviously a shill because we're not dealing with the Secretariat, which has been captured. We're dealing with the Board of Governors. And I'm going to be discussing a tweet on the 3rd of July, 2016. It was on my computer screen one morning when I booted up. The Department of Defense did not respond to the following email. That is why it's now necessary for the people of Germany and Japan and the groups that administer the U.S. treaties for defense of these countries to assist in directing the U.S. military. The U.S. military is being reconfigured. Do not be confused. The people of the United States are now in charge because of the treason and interregnum and corruption from the Banking Cartel. And on the 3rd of March, I said to someone in the U.S. Department of Defense dealing with the power transition model, please let me know the correct official at the Department of Defense whom I should be informing of my communications with the Ministers of Finance, the European Union, the U.S. Congress, the Supreme Court, and the 50 states on this matter affecting national security if you are uncomfortable relaying this information. And I sent that to the person who was dealing with the power transition model. And then there was a conversation that Tracy Marshall had. Contrary to a conventional myth, human society doesn't collapse into a Hobbesian state of nature in the event of disaster. On the contrary, people tend to pull together and become more cooperative. And Tim Smith also said, and he was responding to Simon Duckett, "I'm reminded of the Muslims who immediately organized through the mosques to go into flood-stricken areas in the UK a while back to help clear the debris up. Other than fire and rescue, people saw nobody for days. Contingency plans don't exist." And then there's somebody named Karen Bailey Moore who said, "Until people have been able to come to terms with reality and the villages and towns have cleaned out the corruption from the banking cartel, I'm going to have a difficult time sorting things out. I read your comments after posting the DCTV archives on the internet. I'm including in the teleprompter all of the suggestions and advice that people have been giving me so that you can see that we're all working together in the global currency reset. Here is what you all can do to help in the global currency reset. Stay tuned into the global currency reset, where we're replacing paper currency for currency out of gold and local currency. We're forming small groups. We're paying attention to what's really going on by tuning out of the mainstream media and developing our own channels of communication. We're learning to think critically and helping others to think straight. We're making sure that local areas and villages and towns have local currencies, and we're holding local officials accountable." And then on the 9th of September, I wrote, "The banking cartel likes to interrupt what I'm doing when it feels threatened. The banking cartel should feel threatened. We are winding them down because they have no right to continue to bother us. We own the world's wealth, and we are deploying the world's monetary gold reserves to replace the paper currencies of the banking cartel. The companies of the banking cartel are insolvent. That means they're bankrupt. And we are winding them down in the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF, which manages the global debt facility. Consistency is one way of learning to tell what's true from what's false. As for getting caught up, start a study group and take things at your own pace. This will help you with critical thinking. YouTube saw fit to hide my response to Liz behind a button, so I'm tweeting it in addition to leaving it in the YouTube comments section." And then there's a tweet from the 23rd of August. "The agents of the banking cartel are out in force trying to crash the markets. They're also misusing my Twitter account. This is telling you that I'm viral. There's no reason to panic. The world's assets are safe in the trust that was established at the end of World War II, and we, that is, a coalition that was predicted by the United States National War College with 90 to 95% accuracy, I call us the Coalition for the Rule of Law. It includes the U.S. militaries, Japanese militaries, and German militaries, without the traitorous brass, and the United States minus the Federal Reserve Bank, also minus dishonest politicians, which includes Donald Trump. At the end of this tweet, the Coalition for the Rule of Law is instructing the UN peacekeeping troops to leave U.S. soil. It will take some time for these instructions to be carried out because the elites are having a hard time understanding that they are no longer calling the shots. The Coalition for the Rule of Law is in charge. I'm speaking for this coalition, and I'm taking instructions from all of humanity. You can all call me on whether I'm fulfilling my role. I'm transparent, and I answer to everybody. I'm showing you with these old tweets how I used a graphic to illustrate that currency speculators We're not going to get rich during the global currency reset to exchange the paper currencies issued by the banking cartel for currencies minted out of the gold on deposit in the global debt facility and for local currencies issued by villages and towns. And this was to somebody named Shambhala Warrior. She's a disinformation agent, and I blocked her from ever posting on my Twitter account. She may attempt to post her disinformation elsewhere. I'm making it clear that you should disregard any impression that she tries to give about the markets, which are owned by the global debt facility, since the banking cartel is insolvent and is getting wound down in the global debt facility. On page 4, you see how Shambhala Warrior is impersonating me and misused my graphic about currency speculators. Ignore the statement that a stock market crash is coming. It is not, because we, humanity, own the banking cartel, and we are winding them down. This means that we, humanity, own the bulk of the shares in the stock markets. We are certainly not going to crash the markets. We're going to exchange the paper currencies issued by the private central banks during the global currency reset. This is going to take a long time, and we're all going to agree on the proper sequence and accomplish this in a process that doesn't crash the markets. And then on the 14th of August, I've tried many times to prevent the scammers who are preying off of people by selling them foreign currencies for get-rich-quick schemes. The alternative in mainstream media is owned by the banking cartel, and many people have been duped by their lies. The sooner you admit you've been duped, the better off you'll be. Try to learn from your mistake. If you're unable to find the persons who sold you these currencies and have them refund you your money, during the global currency reset, for a considerable period, we're going to be using local currencies issued by villages and towns. There'll be more and more of these currencies, and continue to use the banking cartel's currencies until they are all replaced. I discussed Berkshire's and some other examples of local currencies in the teleprompter. The procedures for exchanging currencies and eligibility rules are going to be spelled out. Don't expect that you're going to have the chance to exchange your foreign currencies if you don't live in the country that issued that currency. Thank you for watching another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. Today's segment is about accountability in the global currency reset. The cleanup of corruption in our world is a big job, and we're ready to exchange the banking cartel's corrupt currencies. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis.